What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to the bench, guys, for a brand new episode on our F9F-8P Photo Cougar by Kitty Hawk. And today we're going to move forward here and we're just going to have some fun. We've got a big episode planned. We've got a new cutting mat down here on the bench. I've got a spray booth. I can't wait to go ahead and break in today. So let's go ahead and dive right on in. Get this party started. Now, before we get into the actual assembly today, let's talk a little bit about paint. Now, one of the issues I have with Kitty Hawk is they're not always 100% accurate in terms of their color callouts or even their decal markings or placement. You have to really check your references and figure out really what colors to use. Take, for example, this color right here. This is more of like a grayish white, but they want me to use this for the undersurface of the aircraft. Now, the undersurface is supposed to be a white or Insignia white. As you can tell, compared to Tamiya flat white, this is not white. This is actually more of like a grayish tinted white. So this I can't use as they call out for in the instructions. That doesn't mean I'm not going to use it. I might use it for some shading or whatnot, but again, it's a little bit frustrating. Now, this is the color right here I'm going to actually be using for the undersurface. This is Mission Models Insignia White, and I usually like Mission Models stuff. I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. It's a brand new bottle, just picked it up from the hobby store, and so I'm hoping this is going to go well. But again, that's one of the things about Kitty Hawk. You really have to check your references. Don't just trust what they give you in the instructions, because sometimes they are not correct in any way, shape, or form. So it's always a good idea when you have a Kitty Hawk kit, make sure to have plenty of references. Also for the cockpit, they really don't call out a color. We're going to be using this. This is a Vallejo Model Air. This is a dark gull gray. And this is what I've actually seen on a lot of forums, different places online. It actually shows as kind of a darker gray. So we're going to be using this for our interior color, which includes the cockpit floor, the cockpit sidewalls, as well as the seat and all that good stuff. Now for the exterior color, we're going to be using this Mission Models Light Gull Gray. So I picked this up. Hopefully this works out well. With the Light Gull Gray and the Insignia White, this thing will start looking the part. So with paint all out of the way, guys, let's go ahead and dive right on in. First things I want to go ahead and do, I need to build up that seat. We need to start trying to do a little bit of work there on the cockpit, start putting down the photo etch, start getting this thing all put together. Now, again, this is a Kitty Hawk kit, so I have no idea how the fit's going to be with this or what we're missing or all of that good stuff. But I think we take our time, we have some fun with it, we push forward, and well, we'll just see what happens. So anyway, guys, on to that first time lapse. Let's get this cockpit started. All right, everybody, we are back and we have our cockpit tub more or less put together and it looks okay. I'm actually very surprised at how well the photo etch has worked. But now we start getting into some issues because the rear bulkhead doesn't really want to fit exactly where it should go. Also, I've noticed that this kit is actually missing some details. Now we should have a little bit of a headrest that sticks up above that seat. That isn't actually in here on the kit. So that's a little bit annoying. Also, I've noticed that that canopy itself, the rear sliding part, doesn't have any rear decking detail, which again is kind of strange. But I think I have an idea of how I can go ahead and recreate those missing details. Now I actually have this kit right here. Now, this is a 1/48 scale Collect Air resin F9F-8 and 8P Cougar. The problem is the resin fuselage is very, very warped and it's just a lot of work building a resin kit, so I've never really built it. But that doesn't mean that I can't use it for inspiration. I went ahead and rifled through the parts and I found a couple of trees that will actually help us. This is the very first one I found. As you can see, a lot of flash. This is a resin kit, so very difficult to go ahead and get these things cleaned up. But as you can see, we have a bulkhead. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to use this as a bit of a template, and I'm going to go ahead and reproduce that out of just a plain old strip of styrene. Then I'll go ahead and cut it down to size and I can glue it to the back of the chair, which will give us our missing detail. All in all, not too bad. I think that'll work out well. And in terms of the cockpit canopy, as you can see here, this is the white metal version that comes in the Collect Air kit, and it does have some detail right there in the very rear. Now this does not have it here in the kit. I've looked through the instructions, I've looked through the parts, I just can't find anything that talks a little bit about putting in some detail there at the back of the canopy. So I'm going to have to try to figure out a way to go ahead and reproduce that and make it look at least believable. I don't really have any reference shots that give me the exact dimensions or any of the detail, but as you can see here in the kit, there's nothing, so I'm pretty much flying blind. Again, it is Kitty Hawk, so sometimes you miss parts, sometimes they do wrong versions, the paint's not always right on, and sometimes the fit is pretty bad. But as you can see here, there is nothing in terms of any detail in the back part of that canopy. Also, looking through my references, I noticed there is additional parts here that are missing. For example, right here we can see that that's the seat. And right here, there's this little thing that kind of sticks out on the very back of that headrest, and there's a pipe that fits up into the side of it. And that's actually the same tubing that they do include here in the kit, but they end up stopping that tubing at the very top of that rear decking. So we're going to have to go ahead and scratch build that and figure that out as well. But aside from that, and I know that seems like a lot of little issues here and there, I think we are actually looking pretty decent. The chair looks great. Yeah, we're missing some parts and pieces here and there, but overall, I like how this has gone together. It looks pretty accurate. And then even though we have just photo etch details glued down there to the side, they aren't horrible. They actually look decent. One thing I am noticing though is right there on the side, there's no throttle. So we're going to have to go ahead and figure out what to do with that. Maybe we'll scratch build it. Maybe we can look through our spares and find a lever that looks convincing. I don't really know. So that's going to be something we have to figure out. But let's go ahead and move forward here, guys, and we're going to go ahead and start doing some painting. And for that, let me go ahead and introduce you to my new spray booth. Now this is a spray booth I picked up a little bit before Christmas, and I'm really excited to go ahead and give it a shot today. I'm still working with the camera angles and with the lighting and all that, but I wanted to go ahead and see if I could incorporate the spray booth into my actual projects. So let's go ahead and give the spray booth a test. We're going to jump in with some Stannarez white primer, prime all the cockpit parts, then come in with some dark gull gray, and then overcoat everything with a nice coat of Future. Let's see how this works. All right, everybody, we are back, and I gotta tell you, that spray booth worked beautifully. The reason I picked that up is actually when I was going through my 12 sprues, I did a lot of painting. I spent hours and hours out there airbrushing and painting for multiple models, and let's just say that it got kind of fumey out there. There was a lot of paint fumes floating around in the air, and even though I do wear a respirator when I airbrush, it just was getting to be a little bit too much. So I decided to go ahead and look into a spray booth. It's got some LED lights built in, as well as a 2-speed fan and ducting to go ahead and put the fumes wherever you want them. It's got a couple of filters on the inside as well, so I think it's a great investment. Probably be seeing that in other upcoming videos. Just have to go ahead and tweak the camera angle a little bit and probably mess with the lighting. But anyway, back onto the kit, guys. I wanted to go ahead and do a little bit more work here and start putting together the front wheel bay. I've been looking at my references and it looks a little bit too squat. And I know Kitty Hawk did the exact same thing on the FJ2 Fury. It had a little bit more of a tail up stance, when in reality it should have more of a nose up stance. Now again, looking through my Collect Air F9F-8 Cougar, I did pull out the white metal landing gear. And as you can see, there's a big size difference between the one that's white metal and the one here in the Kitty Hawk kit. So we're going to have to go ahead and adjust the Kitty Hawk leg to have a little bit more length to it. I'm not going to take it as far as we have here in the Collect Air white metal part, but I am going to use that as kind of a guide. So maybe just go ahead and double what we have here in the kit, and hopefully that works out well. Now to do that though, we're going to have to go ahead and cut the landing gear and separate it into 2 separate parts, and then we'll have to go ahead and replace that center piston with another scratch built part that extends it just a little bit. But that means I have to go ahead and make that part we're cutting out. So I'm going to grab some sprue, I'm going to grab a candle, some matches, we're going to go ahead and stretch that and create an insert to lengthen that gear just a little bit. Give that a nice general even heat. Once I start filling it, give a little bit, take it off the heat, and just slowly stretch it out till I have the diameter about where I want it. And that looks good right about there. So I think that's going to be perfect. We'll let that cool down, then we'll cut it into place and see how we look. And of course, Kitty Hawk wants you to go ahead and install that nose gear up inside the wheel well and then put everything together around it, which means I could potentially snap that gear off, so I don't want to do that. So I think what we'll do instead is I'm just going to go ahead and clean up everything I can on the gear, and then we're going to go ahead and just cut it in half, and I'm hoping to be able to install just the top part of the gear down into the wheel bay. Once we get everything kind of hooked together and we get everything weighted, then we can go ahead and install the bottom portion of the landing gear, which would be the wheel, the little shock absorber, and then of course the strut just right up inside. Now I gotta tell you, I don't really like how Kitty Hawk has designed this front gear. This is actually separated there at the bottom where the wheel attaches into the axle and all that actually glues onto the front of the landing gear itself. So I don't feel it's a very sturdy connection. But I think what we're going to do here is let's just go ahead and attach these together. We're just going to go ahead and give them a real quick drop of super glue. I want to go ahead and see the length and figure out how this all goes together. I don't want to go ahead and attach it 100%. So I'm just going to go ahead and tack it just briefly in with a little bit of super glue. And then I think we should be good to go ahead and start cutting, trimming, and lengthening the landing gear itself. Again, you got to have those jeweler files. I'm going to get in there and clean up all the parts and pieces, because once you get this thing apart, it's going to be a lot harder to hold on to. Like I mentioned, just one little drop of super glue there on that front. We're going to just push these parts together, which should tack it into place. And I think, yeah, that's pretty sturdy. Let's go ahead and do some measurements, and let's go ahead and cut this landing gear in half. I'm also going to remove the Oleo scissor link. That's going to pull that out as well. Even though it did break when I pulled it off of the sprue, I'm just going to remove it, and then we're going to have to scratch build one of our own. How I'm going to do that, I really don't know. Maybe I can look through my spares box and find something that looks about right. So now we have 2 parts of our landing gear, and we're going to pull out our jeweler files, and let's go ahead and start cleaning up those ends. Make them as flush and as flat as possible, and then we can go ahead and take our X-Acto knife. We can just dimple the very center of each of these parts, drill it out, and then we can install our new strut. Now that we have both of our pieces nicely cleaned up and squared off, let's grab our pin vise, and we have a micro drill bit chucked into the end of this. Let's go ahead and open up both of the ends. I'm going to be using my hand drill and my pin vise much more than any sort of rotary tool, because this is very delicate and I have a feeling it might melt plastic, and we don't want to do that. So I want to make sure to be as careful as I can. Get you a little close up here. As you can see, we are still drilling here on the very top part of the landing gear. I'm being very, very careful, guys. I'm taking my time. I don't want to stretch or break or hurt the plastic part in any way, shape, or form. So I think the more time you take, the better results you're going to end up with. Now that we have both of the areas there nicely drilled out, I want to go ahead and install the bottom section of the landing gear together. So that is going to be the front area where the wheel attaches, right there where the compression coil below the new strut that we're replacing. Now I'm not going to glue that sliding strut into place yet, just pressure fit that for now. But once this is dry, we'll be able to come back and hopefully cut this down and size it correctly so we have a little bit of a nose-up stance. One last thing I do want to go ahead and do as those parts are off camera drying, let's go ahead and focus here on the wheel bay itself. One of the issues I have with Kitty Hawk is that you actually go from extremes. Sometimes you have parts that just click right into place and have a nice solid feel. Other times you have parts that don't fit at all, that you have to do a lot of surgery or a lot of alteration of plastic in order to get any of these things close to being where they should be. Now in my opinion, it doesn't mean that kits are unbuildable. It just simply means that when you're building these, you have to go ahead and give a little bit more time and a little bit more effort into getting these things to look the part. Something you really don't have to worry too much about with Tamiya or Hasegawa. But with that being said, guys, this front landing gear bay is actually going together beautifully. We have the two sidewalls that pretty much clicked right into place, and we're going to put the front bulkhead on, the rear bulkhead. It will also build the well for the air brakes. But I think that's going to be it for us today, guys. I am happy with how this kit is turning out so far. I haven't really done a lot of assembly yet, so I'm not really sure how that's all going to go. But next episode, I hope to go ahead and finish off the cockpit, get all the details in like decals and whatnot. We also have some scratch built details. For example, I created this hose right here out of twisted solder. That's going to go in the back bulkhead coming up into the back of the seat. And we also drilled a hole right here in the side console that I'm going to be installing a scratch built oxygen tube that I've seen in the reference photos. So that's going to drop in there, drape over, and then drop down into the center of the seat. So that's going to add a little bit of extra interest. And lastly, I did go ahead and do a quick test fit and glued in the wheel bay and the air brake wells. I got to tell you, it doesn't really fit as well as I would like it to. And I know this is going to be really tough going forward because the locating pins aren't quite right. So we have a challenge ahead of us. But until then, you guys know the drill. Go out there and get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool. And we'll see you back here on episode number 3 for the F9F-8P Photo Cougar for the Recon group build. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you soon.